Welcome to Unbound, the podcast with Beth Curry, author, storyteller, and survivor. This is where books meet real life, where Beth reads chapters from her work and breaks free from the traditional audiobook format, diving deeper into the personal experiences, lessons, and liberation behind every page. Nothing is off limits. Let's get unbound.
Welcome back to Unbound, off script. I'm Beth. Hi. I'm going to start this episode a little bit different because I'm going to begin with a listener question. It comes from Barb, and she asked me, what's a quirk about you that you suspect or you know for a fact annoys other people? Honestly, I didn't even have to think about it. I know exactly what it is. It's that I never leave, like ever. If I'm hanging out at someone's house, just me and them, I somehow lose all concept of time, space, social cues, and daylight. I could be sitting there chatting, sipping my drink, totally oblivious while my friend or the host or whatever is doing these increasingly obvious things like yawning or turning off lights or putting the cat to bed or brushing their teeth, changing into their pajamas. And I'm still so anyway, did I tell you what happened in 2003? It helps me a lot when I have other people with me who can do the whole polite exit thing, the clappers, the alrighty, well, this was great people. They're my social translators. Without them, I just remain. Now, I have zero problem whatsoever when people stay at my place forever. I usually love that. I'll make snacks or we'll watch something, talk nonsense till the sun rises, whatever. I'm good. But people always end up leaving at some point. And I don't know how they know when it's time to go, but they just do. It's like they were given some sort of a manual at birth or something that I somehow missed. I don't know. Where it really becomes an issue for me, though, I think, is with someone I don't think I've ever mentioned here before, she says sarcastically, Nate, because he's kind of like me. Actually, he's better at it, to be fair. If we're talking online, having a coffee, cooking or baking or just doing something together, hanging out, he's really good at recognizing that it's late for me, time zones and all that shit. And he'll say, okay, you should probably sleep, but I swear, if this were 1991 and we were just hanging out at his apartment, we'd still be there, just sitting in the same spot, surrounded by the ghosts of decades past, neither of us really knowing how or when to wrap shit up. So yeah, I'm absolutely the reigning champion of overstaying my welcome. I will outlast the candles, the wine, the music, the conversation, the era. I could be at a coffee shop for 8 hours, a bar until last call. Still I'll be like, so do you want to split another drink? Or anyway, that's me. I'm crazy. I don't know what this says about me, but I feel like with all my fascination with human behavior, I should probably dig deeper. I don't know, maybe it's connection, maybe it's FOMO, or I don't know. Maybe I'm just socially defective in the lingering department. I don't know. Either way, Barb, there's your answer. If you ever invite me over, maybe schedule an intervention for about, hour 5. Okay, so today's episode is a little bit different. So I'm going to take you back to 1992 to a 17-year-old girl who was told explicitly and implicitly by the world and by herself that she shouldn't exist in certain spaces. So I found something a while back. This is me I'm talking about, by the way, if you haven't figured that out. And I know you have because y'all are smarter than I am. And you know how to leave social situations. Anyway, I found a comp card from my brief modeling stint in the early 90s. And on the back, written in black magic marker, that kind of stuff we used to sniff for cheap highs. Great times. Why did they get rid of that? Anyway, these words I wrote that I don't even remember writing. But reading them now, 33-ish years later, they kind of hit hard. This happened at a strange time in my life. And I'm pimping the show again. Season 3 of Unbound, The Other Side of Quiet, is going to dig into that period more deeply. My mom didn't know a lot about what was going on in my life then, so she thought getting me into this modeling gig was going to help me with whatever I was struggling with, but that's because she didn't realize what I was really struggling with. The whole experience, as short-lived as it was, helped me in some ways, and it hurt me in others. But most importantly, I grew and I learned. So I'm going to read to you what 17-year-old me wrote on the back of that comp card, and then talk about what it means to kind of take up space when the world tells you that you're not supposed to. Okay, so here's what I wrote. Fat girls don't model. That's what they say. 17, size 16, or 20 if the agency didn't care. Depends on the wardrobe. The makeup artist's hands shake when he contours my face, like fat might be contagious. So beautiful, says the thick accent from the hair guy named Gigi. Why was this Carl guy taking me to Sam the Record Man? He's a creep. High school was worse. Bad Brandon made me leave. For my own good. Just as well. He was the evil, but there were still the others. The cafeteria was a battlefield. Lockers left bruises. Girls made a game of counting my calories at lunch, mocking my clothes. They didn't make much for my size. So I left, even though I have him. Midnight binges fill the empty spaces, cookie crumbs in bed, ice cream for dinner. No one watches me eat now. But pointed toes, straight spine, head high. The camera loves angles, they say, even fat ones, even mine. Walk, turn, walk, breathe. They watch. The same ones who said I couldn't, would never, should not. Fat girls don't model, but here I am, walking. So reading these words now, all these decades later, I'm struck by how much pain lived between those lines. I was broken by others, then finished the job myself. What that 17-year-old girl didn't know was that the worst was yet to come. And I just need to put an aside in here. I assume I wrote it back when I was 17. I may have been a little bit older. I'm not sure. I have no recollection, but it is absolutely my handwriting, and I can guarantee my thoughts. But anyway, the worst was yet to come. The years that followed would carve deeper wounds, test stronger limits. But here's what else she didn't know. She was stronger than all of it. I showed them, all of them. The makeup artists with their shaking hands, the cruel girls counting calories, the Brandons of the world who thought they were doing me favors by breaking my heart. I showed myself too. The girl who thought midnight binges could fill the emptiness, who accepted crumbs of kindness because she thought she deserved no more. I took my power back, one decision at a time, 1 pound at a time, 1 degree at a time. I got an education, I hustled, I lost a couple 100 pounds, but more importantly, I gained something priceless, self-respect. I learned to carefully curate who I allow into my space, understanding that the company we keep shapes the lives we lead. That girl who wrote on the back of the comp card with a magic marker, she was already walking, already defying, already proving them wrong. She just didn't know yet that she was taking the first steps of a much longer journey. I am no longer giving up on myself. That's the real transformation. Not the lost weight, not the degrees, not the career successes. It's the unwavering commitment to my own worth, the refusal to let anyone else define my possibilities. They said what I couldn't do. I showed them who I am. Okay, so let's talk about what was actually happening in 1992 in the modeling industry and why what I was doing, along with a lot of other plus-sizers, was so fucking radical, even if nobody, including me, realized it at the time. The early 90s were kind of the peak of the supermodel era. I think it was right before the waif stuff took over, but I might be wrong. I just remember Cindy Crawford and Naomi Campbell and Kate Moss, and the industry was obsessed with a very specific body type. We're talking size 0 to 2, maybe a 4 if you were curvy. So plus size modeling existed, but it was completely segregated. With the exception of the agency I was with, because it was plus figure models, Little Women. But the Little Women, I think at the time, and I may be remembering this incorrectly, was more about height than actual size. I could be wrong. But But yeah, like the segregation, the different agencies, the different shoots, the different magazines, and plus size in the industry meant size 8 to 10, which is absolutely insane when you think about it. Like that's what I am now. The average woman was and still is a size 14 to 16. So here I was, a 17-year-old size 16 to 20, somehow ending up in front of all of this, not in the plus size category, but just kind of existing in a space that was not designed for me at all. And the cognitive dissonance that created for me, like for the people around me, was friggin' brutal. So yeah, want to dig into the line, the makeup artist handshake, when he contours my face, like fat might be contagious. This is the violence of beauty standards made physical. This person's literal hands are shaking because my body makes them uncomfortable. Not because I was aggressive or unpleasant. I was a damn kid, for crying out loud. But my size was so outside the norm that it created this physical reaction in someone whose job was to work with faces and bodies. Think about what that might do to a 17-year-old. You internalize it. You start believing that your body is contagious, is wrong, it's offensive just by existing. And then there's the Gigi guy, the hair guy. He called me beautiful in his thick accent. And that contradiction, the shaking hands and his comment of being beautiful, that's the mindfuck of existing in a body the world hasn't decided how to categorize. And it's wild. And something else that doesn't get talked about enough is the what's the word? Predatory nature of the industry, especially toward young girls who don't fit the mold. Like, why was this guy, Carl, taking me to Sam the Record Man? He's a creep. I wrote that, I assume, in 1992. And even then, even as a kid, I knew something was off. And even with what I was going through, which I haven't shared a lot about yet, I didn't have the language or the framework to name it as predatory behavior. I didn't have the confidence to say no or walk away. It was weird, but it'll make more sense in season 3. Anyway, when you're told your whole life that you're not good enough, you're not pretty enough, you're not thin enough, and then someone in a position of power shows you attention, you accept it, even when every instinct is screaming that something is wrong. And that's the grooming that happens to girls who are just starving for validation. And I don't just mean metaphorically starving, though the eating disorder piece is totally real, but just like starving for someone to tell you that you're worth something. So sad, so sad. High school was worse. Bad Brandon made me leave for my own good. So I just want to unpack the manipulation in that phrase, for my own good. I hate that phrase, especially in the last 5 years. Brandon wasn't some high school boyfriend who broke my heart in the typical teenage way. Keep saying it. The full story's coming in season 3, The Other Side of Quiet. What I can tell you now is this. I was in an abusive relationship, or I thought I was in an abusive relationship. It's kind of confusing. It'll make more sense later. But the kind where leaving school felt safer than staying. The kind where, an abuser kind of convinces you that isolation is protection. How many times do abusive people frame their control as care? I've had narcissistic friendships. I know people who have been in narcissistic relationships. How many times are we told that someone hurting us is actually helping us? So at 17, I told myself that leaving school was for my own good because that's how abuse kind of rewires your brain, right? You start defending the person who's harming you and you start believing that your isolation or your pain or your shrinking world is kind of all for your benefit. That's not teenage heartbreak, it's trauma. And the fact that I didn't have the language to name it then doesn't make it any less real. The mental gymnastics that we do to survive any kind of abuse are fucking extraordinary, like seriously. And then there's like the cafeteria battlefield, lockers leaving bruises, girls making games out of counting my calories. So what's wild, this wasn't unusual. I feel like it's a little more accepted now, being larger and, fashion choices and like just society kind of accepts things a little bit easier now. And that's great. But for like fat kids in the 90s, especially fat girls, this was just like a Tuesday. School was a war zone. 100%. Your body was public property. You were subject to commentary, ridicule, and physical violence, and I was too. Um, Nobody called it bullying back then. Well, not really. Like, if they did, the solution was always, you just lose weight rather than stop bullying. Like, that's disgusting. The burden was on the victim to change rather than on the perpetrators to stop being cruel. Like, what in the hell? They didn't make much for my size back then. This line hits different now because it's still largely true. Plus size fashion has improved, but the selection is still limited, still kind of segregated, and still treated as other. Unless you get into the specialty stores like Torrid and stuff like that. But in 1992, like, forget it. You got your clothes from specialty stores or the women's section, which was code for fat. The styles were matronly. They were shapeless. They were designed to hide rather than celebrate. So being a teenager, wanting to be stylish and wanting to fit in while being fat, you were fucked, like, completely. You screwed. You either wore clothes that didn't fit properly or you wore age-appropriate clothes that made you look 40. Like, really? The message was pretty damn clear, though. Like, your body doesn't deserve style, doesn't deserve attention, and it certainly doesn't deserve to take up space. So I left, even though I have him. That line, even though I have him, that was about Nate. The one person who made me feel safe. He treated me with kindness and he saw me as worthy of care. Having someone like that in your life and still feeling like you need to leave, like, that's how bad things had gotten for me. When you're being abused, even the good things in your life can't really outweigh the danger. Like, even love, real, genuine, protective love isn't enough to make you stay in an unsafe situation. Nate was the lifeline I didn't feel like I could hold on to. Season 3 will dig deeper into why, but for now, just know sometimes leaving is the only option, even when it means leaving good things behind. Midnight binges fill the empty spaces, cookie crumbs in bed, ice cream for dinner. So, talking about eating disorders and how they present differently in fat bodies. When I hate using the word fat and fat bodies, like, larger, I don't know, like, nothing feels right at all. Like, it's just a body. It's just a body. Anyway, when a thin person restricts food, binges, purges, and I used to do that too, we call it anorexia or bulimia. There's concern, there's intervention, there's treatment. But when a larger person does the exact same stuff, like, we just call it lack of willpower. We tell them to eat less, move more. We don't recognize it as an eating disorder because the outcome, which is weight loss, is the desired result. But disordered eating is disordered eating, regardless of your size. And I was deep in it at 17. I was binging alone at night, hating myself. I was using food to fill emotional voids that food can't actually fill. I was taking Ipecac syrup to make myself puke. Like, that was a trippy period in my life. Classic eating disorder behavior, right? But nobody was worried. Nobody suggested therapy because I was fat, and fat people are supposed to have fucked up relationships with food, right? But pointed toes, straight spine, head high. Even in the middle of all that pain and all that trauma, all that internalized shame, I still walked, I still posed, I still took up space. And I think that the girl back then had more courage than she gave herself credit for. She didn't have the body they wanted. She didn't have the confidence they expected, but she walked anyway. The camera loves angles, they say, even fat ones, even mine. I think that there's defiance in that line. There's a fuck you to everyone who said I couldn't, shouldn't, or would never. And that defiance, that kind of refusal to disappear, I think that's what saved me eventually. Fast forward over 3 decades, like I said, I've lost a couple 100 pounds. I've built a career of sorts. I did a whole bunch of school stuff. I've helped other people transform their relationship with food. The truth is, though, the real transformation wasn't the weight loss for me. It was learning that I deserved to exist, period. That my worth wasn't determined by my size. I could curate my life and who I let in and what I accept and how I show up based on my values rather than someone else's standards. And to be clear, not in the toxic positivity way. That's coming season 2, January 2026. Anyway, the weight loss was, for me, was a symptom of that internal shift and not the cause of it. So when I made these changes, I wasn't actively pursuing weight loss, but the mental changes that I made, the side effect, literally, of that was weight loss. And I think that's cool. So the modeling thing, this is interesting to me, as fucked up and complicated as it was, it did help. So not in the way that my mom thought it would, not in the way the industry intended, of course. But it taught me that I could walk into spaces I wasn't supposed to occupy. I could exist in rooms that weren't designed for me. And, my presence alone was an act of defiance. And sometimes the most radical thing that I think you can do is refuse to disappear. They want you to, but don't do it. So, yeah, the girl at whatever age it was that she wrote on the back of that call card with magic marker fumes in her head and pain in her heart, she was already walking towards something, even if she didn't know what it was yet. And she sure as hell didn't. She was already defying, as she has done since birth, already proving them wrong, already taking, the first steps of a much longer journey. And I'm not going to tell you it was all worth it, because some of it really friggin' wasn't. The trauma was real, the harm was real, and the years it took to undo the damage that I did to myself and others did to me, all real. And there's still some residual damage too. But I'm not going to pretend that the girl wasn't brave, because she was braver than anyone, including herself, gave her credit for sure. Fat girls don't model, that's what they said, but I walked anyway. Yeah. So we've got another question, this one from Remy. Remy asks, why do you fear judgment with regards to your upcoming book, as you alluded to in the chapter, The Truth About Rainbows? Ooh, great question, Remy. And I want to be clear about something right off the bat. It's not that I fear judgment so much as I know it's likely coming. And, well, that's never a good time. There's a difference between being afraid of something and just being realistic about what's probably going to happen. So I'll tell you a little story that perfectly illustrates why I'm bracing for impact here. So during the pandemic, and look, I'm not trying to relitigate the entire COVID experience here. I shared a video on my social media explaining why I had a medical exemption for covering my face. And this was before, or it was right after, sorry. It had been months and months and months, and I was sick and tired of trying to explain myself and all the backlash from people. And I had started isolating again and everything. And I got pushed in a parking lot by someone. I was outside, open air breathing. There was nobody around me except for this person, and they saw my bare face and decided that pushing me was the solution. Like, honestly. So I snapped and I recorded this video and I shared it to my social media. And before anyone jumps to conclusions, this wasn't about me not believing in science. We've learned a lot more now that there are tons of peer-reviewed studies out there. And it wasn't about politics. It was about something else entirely, which is a really important part of the other side of quiet. So I shared this vulnerable, honest explanation. I put myself out there in ways I never have in my life. And I told the truth about my situation. And I got some of the most abhorrent replies from friends and strangers alike, like friends and strangers. So here's the thing. I don't give a crap what a stranger thinks. I really don't. Some random person on the internet who doesn't know me, doesn't know my story, doesn't know my medical history, their opinion is worth exactly nothing to me. But the people I thought loved me, the people I thought knew me, those responses cut like a fucking knife. So do you have any idea what it's like to have people you thought cared about you not believe you? To be called a liar or selfish or worse when you're telling the truth about your own lived experience? About the people you love and loved, to mock you behind your back to other people and have it come back to you? It's one thing to disagree about policy or best practices or scientific interpretation. Cool. I'm a critical thinker. I kind of reject certain things and being told what to do. It's another thing entirely to look at someone's personal medical situation and decide that they're making it up for what? What are they making it up for? Attention? Convenience? I don't know. A political agenda? I don't know. The cruelty was shocking, and it came from people I loved. And, the really complicated part, yeah, I still have some of these people around. I didn't cut everyone out who said shitty things to me during that time, or who said shitty things to other people about me at that time. Because life is complicated. Relationships are complicated. People fuck up. People get caught up in mass hysteria and fear, and they say things that maybe they wouldn't say in calmer times. I chose not to bring up certain topics with certain people. I set boundaries. I compartmentalized. There's that word again. But now, with the other side of quiet, they're going to hear the whole story. The whole story. And there's one person in particular I'm thinking of who's going to read or hear the full context. And knowing what, was said about me by this person 5-6 years ago, maybe more, it's weird to consider allowing that. To open myself up to that potential judgment again. I know what this person said to other people about certain parts of my life, certain people in my life. But, this is what I keep coming back to. I have nothing to hide, like nothing. This is my story, and I can't force people to believe me. I can tell the truth. I can be vulnerable. I can lay out the facts and the experiences and the context. And some people still won't believe me. Some people will decide I'm exaggerating or misremembering or flat out lying. And you know what? That says more about them than it does about me, right? We hear that a lot. So, Remy, when you ask why I fear judgment about the upcoming book, it's because I've already experienced what happens when I'm vulnerable about difficult, complicated parts of my story. I watched people I cared about decide that their interpretation of my experience was more valid than my actual lived reality. I've already felt the sting of being disbelieved by people who claim to love me. So, yeah, I know judgment is coming. I'm not afraid of it. I'm just, realistic about it. And I'm making the choice to tell my story anyway, because the people who need to hear it, the people who will recognize themselves in it, who will feel less alone because of it, those people matter more than the judgment of people who've already decided what they think about me. Even if, they were part of the story. But yeah, that's the truth. You can't control how people receive your story. You can only control whether you tell it. And I've spent too much of my life staying silent to protect other people's comfort. Too much. I've spent too many years making myself smaller, so others don't have to confront uncomfortable truths. And I am completely and utterly done with that shit. Done. Hence the book title, right? The Other Side of Quiet. It's going to tell stories that some people won't want to hear, and it's going to reveal things that might make people uncomfortable, and it's going to challenge assumptions and complicate narratives. And some people are going to judge me for it. Some people already are judging me for it, and they haven't even read it yet. But the alternative, like staying quiet, continuing to stay quiet to avoid judgment, that is not even an option anymore. That's the old version of me who thought other people's opinions mattered more than my own truth. This is my story. I'm telling it, and whoever doesn't believe it, that's their problem, not mine. So, yeah. Thanks for the question, Remy. It's a good one, and definitely an important one, because I think a lot of people struggle with this, the fear of being vulnerable and then being judged or disbelieved. What I've learned, though, the people who matter will believe you, and the people who don't believe you, they don't matter. What's that phrase? I just used it the other day. Those who mind don't matter, those who matter don't mind. Yeah, like it's that. That's it. That's the whole philosophy. So bring on the judgment. I've survived worse. Thanks for listening to Off Script. If you have your own They Said I Couldn't story, I'd love to hear it. Drop it in the Facebook group. Join the Facebook group if you're not already there. I would love to have conversations. Support and contact info are in the show notes, and I will see you next time.
Thanks for listening to Unbound with Beth Curry. Join the conversation in the Facebook group or visit author.bethcurry.com. Want to support the show? Head to ko-fi.com/unbound podcast. Until next time, stay unbound.